Well, I'd like to welcome everyone to our webinar, ATAK in Action, Transforming Public Safety with Advanced Technology. I'm Scott Hogue with Public Safety Insight, and I'd like to say thank you to all of you for attending our live webinar today. I think you're really in for a treat. We had the opportunity to get a preview of this webinar a couple of weeks ago, and I was so impressed with what Amos and Keith are both doing in this area. So I think you're in, like I said, for a real treat. Just want to introduce our speakers real quick, and I'll let them chime in as well. First, we have Amos Halava with the Carter County, Tennessee Sheriff's Department. He's a 19-year law enforcement officer, and he has a unique perspective in that he's also done a lot of work in the fire service as well. He has 22 years as a firefighter, captain, and also, I believe, the chief of the fire department of his rural fire department there in Tennessee. So he's got a really great perspective, and really looking forward to his presentation today. And secondly, we have Keith Redlin, the public sector business director for Samsung, and also an Oakland County, Michigan Sheriff's Office Reserve. So he's got the law enforcement perspective as well as the great work he does at Samsung. So I'm going to turn it over to Keith real quick and let Keith say a few words. Keith, we really appreciate Samsung sponsoring this webinar and bringing this great topic to our audience. And I'll turn it over to you.
Hey. All right. Hey, listen, thank you, Scott and Amos for, teaming up today. I am more energized and excited about today's session than even some of the others ones that we've done in the past. And here's why. One of the things that we have started to do in these sessions is find out a way to maintain our relevancy in technology trends. Today, you're going to hear a lot about how this technology supports the mobile mission, but more importantly, supports first responders, whether it's planned or unplanned events. So earlier this week, we had an opportunity to kind of get together, Amos, myself, and the team here at Public Safety Insights. And the thing that I took away from, and I'm hoping everyone here takes away from today, is how Amos is going to walk us through TAK as a solution, but how are we breaking it down from a technical big piece of jargon and breaking it into a practical, easy to chew, easy to get involved in and support your agencies from TAK. So without further ado, I have the pleasure of saying, Amos, you are up and the ball is yours, sir.
Hey, Keith, thanks a lot. I appreciate that introduction, and just get right into it. I know everybody here, I appreciate your time. I know everybody's time is valuable, so I'll try to be as brief as possible. Just know that after this, any additional questions at the end of this, we'll try to answer. But if you have to go beforehand, I'll be sharing my contact information. Please reach out if you need something. But I found out about the Team Awareness Kit, or TAK, about 5 years ago now. We had an officer involved shooting in the county above us. We had 6 agencies respond, and we had multiple teams all over the place looking for the suspect. And we realized that very quickly we needed some kind of tool that would help us manage those types of events. One of my deputies that I worked with was a special forces operator who had retired, and he mentioned that he had a system when he was downrange. Pretty soon, it was pretty quick that we learned about the Team Awareness Kit, and this is available to anybody. Just go to tak.gov and check it out, and I'll kind of go through a little bit of what TAK is, where it come from, how we use it, and would really love if any of you guys start using TAK at your agencies and you come up with a really clever or slick way of doing it. I want to learn. So I always learn by watching other people. So anything you come up with, would love to see it, love to help out any way we can. So I'll just get into this a little bit. So, TAK is available for Android, Windows, and Linux. You can run the server on a Docker or a Linux box, so it makes it very easy to spin up. I'll just get into I'll have a presentation, and then I'll show you a live view of my TAK server running in East Tennessee right now. So just a few little quick talking points. TAK is a common operational picture. The other, word we use for that is shared consciousness. How do you manage something if you have, a lot of different data points or systems or agencies, giving you information? And one great way to do that is visualize it in a geospatial map. And so just to show you kind of how this is being used, SOCOM is using this for the command and control system of record. The Secret Services use it heavily, and the FBI. And it's now being knocked down to the local jurisdictions to be used more often. But the system is free. It's a government off-the-shelf system, so there's no cost to buy the software. There's no per user cost. If you spin up your own server, you can add as many people to it as you want. But it really does help in that multi-jurisdiction, multi-discipline, where you got police, fire, EMS all working one single event or active scene, depending on how you use it. For anybody who needs funding for training, devices, things like that, this does address the Homeland Security Mission Essential Task for combating terrorism, because it does allow an agency to plan and respond to an act of terrorism. So there's potentially money through your Homeland Security offices that can help pay for devices, service, training, anything that you would need. And because training with any system, training is always that gap that we have in first responders. So to get to it, just go to www.tac.gov. You'll register for an account and you'll have access to the full suite that they have. This was originally a DoD tool. It is now run by the Air Force Research Lab, and it is owned by the TAC Product Center, which was owned by PAR government, and that just sold out to Booz Allen. If you're familiar with them, they've got developers working on maintaining and keeping this up. This system is designed to be used. You can do it without cell connectivity. There's even little plugins that go to radios or whatever. So if you're working at an event where, say, the infrastructure has been compromised, a tornado, flood, something like that, there are ways of using this tool even without connectivity to a cellular network. You just connect your device to a radio and you can send your information that way. Like I say, it's a government off-the-shelf product, so you can run this with no cost if you have the technical knowledge to get it up and going. Kind of how my agency uses this today is we track our day-to-day operations. So everybody, as soon as they go available for service in the morning, they turn TAC on whatever device they're using, and we use it just to track the units. You can see this picture on the right side of your screen here where you see a big grouping. That was a 911 call where a guy was shooting up the neighborhood, and he eventually ended up setting his trailer on fire. So you had fire department, you had law enforcement, you had a lot of different moving pieces around that scene. And when I actually was able to take that screenshot was after we were already putting the fire out. But before that, what you've seen was guys stacked around that house. You can see their exact locations. Find and lock. We use this in my jurisdiction a lot. You can very quickly find a particular unit, and on the right, you can lock onto that unit so that when he is driving or running or whatever they're doing, they're in the center of the screen. We use this a lot. If there's a pursuit, you can lock on that unit in pursuit, because sometimes the best information is where did it stop at. Because if you've ever been that officer who is the front car in a pursuit and that guy stops, and now either you're out working a crash, you're running, chasing, maybe you don't get your radio on or your radio traffic's not getting out, at least your dispatch center can see, hey, he stopped here. So if you got units that were setting up spot tricks or whatever, they're going to know to move to that location. And so this is a really great use case for it. Planning, we do a lot with the planning side in TAC. From warrant roundups to school security plans to large events. You can plan where you need people. And I'll give an example. When we were having some of the civil unrest events in our area, we would put red squares where we wanted an officer to be. And we would use a dark map background in the back of it. And if somebody moved off of that target, they moved off of that area we want to cover, we would see it, that red would stand out on our map. And that was very effective for us, because when we had people move, we could see instantly who was moving and where and which direction that they were going before any radio traffic come across. And that helped us keep up with what was going on. So effectively planning in this tool is extremely nice, because you can have everybody looking at the same picture, no matter what you have going on. School security, this one's very near and dear to me, as I have kids that are still in middle school. One of the things that we're doing in my area is the SROs keep their TAC on all day long. We integrate some of the video cameras at the schools into TAC. So what you see in that middle photo right there is you can see a dot where Officer Mullins was standing. This is where the camera was at, and I could actually view live that video feed of him standing in the parking lot looking, at his TAC device while we were doing this training. The other thing you'll notice is we overlaid a map on top of the school. So instead of looking at a Google photo image of the air conditioners and the vents and chimneys on that school, I actually see a map of what the interior of that school looks like. So if I need to talk to somebody and say, hey, it's classroom number such and such, we're all looking at the same image of that school, and we can talk to each other about where we need to go.
Hey,
So,
Amos,
yeah.
Amos, can we stop here for a second? Because I wanted to, we talk about overlaying and video integration. Can you talk a little bit just about, you mentioned plugins, right? And that's how this is actually accomplished. Can you, using this slide here, just kind of share like what level of plugins and how easy it is to make this actually work?
So, the great thing about ATAK, which is the Android version of TAC, is that you, as anybody, could develop their own plugin to put into this. So, writing plugins is very easy. The source code is provided on how to do that, and so all of these are either plugins or already integrated into the app. So you can see that little camera sensor that says CCS Hampton High, that one camera right there. That just loads up a little piece of code, and it's all in the same window. So while you're looking at this, I can see the officer moving and the live video feed at the same time. But having the ability for Android to allow you to write your own plugin allows all these other, there's companies out there that have ones that interface with radios. There's plugins for interfacing with cameras that you can throw, or robots or drones, because drones is another really big deal with this, some of the stuff that you can do with a drone, and that the SUAS plugin that is available for this. So yeah, a lot of the base functionality that comes with the app is very good, but you can expand that out. There's over 100 plugins that's been written and published now, and I'll show you a couple of them. WASP is one that's coming up that is really good for large scale disasters, and it's just a plugin that you can load into it on the Android platform and allows it to work. You can see here some of the stuff on the school security. Just going back to school security real quick, is on these overlays. You just make these overlays. They can be images that you can put a transparent piece to. And some of them, like this one on the right, is different areas of interest. You can see they've got these little stop signs up around this one school. That's the location that they would need to have officers to secure that campus, so that if you do have an event, you can immediately look and say, hey, where do I need to have officer stations to lock this campus down to prevent anybody else from driving up on this campus while I have this event going on? So you have that too.
And just to emphasize on this, a lot of agencies think of TAC as just for a SWAT or special response team, and I just wanted to call out again the way that Amos's sheriff office uses this. It's in service. They go in service every day. So I see you, you see me, dispatch sees us. And then in this case, I can't think of a more important use case to say, hey, even if agencies want to start with school security overlays, this is a place you could start. Is that correct, Amos?
Yep, exactly. Hey, can somebody confirm that the slides are working? I just seen on the chat somebody said they couldn't see, or that the slides weren't updating. Can y'all see that school security one okay?
Amos, this is Scott. I can see the school security slide
Okay.
now. I'll communicate to see if we can figure that out.
Okay, somebody's may have gotten stuck or something. So, all right. So additional sensors, and this leads into what Keith was talking about on different things that can be pushed into this. So it's not just I share my location and you share me, but there's other things that can be done. This picture on the left here is showing two different aircraft tracks. We have the TVI here in Tennessee has an aircraft, and we track that one way. And then you can see in the middle of that is a helicopter flown by Tennessee Highway Patrol. They were doing a search for a lost child. So you can see we're integrating aircraft location information into this. The next picture over is a 911 call for service. I can actually see the notes that 911 puts in on the call, and then I can see exactly the location of where it's at. The next one over, what you'll see is where the phone icon is down here is where the guy called from. He was an injured hiker. You can see the deputy's location as he was walking into him, and behind him, you can actually see 2 ATVs that were using GPS global spotters that update every 2.5 minutes feeding into it. So what you're getting right here is 3 separate systems that are feeding information into one common picture. I have the 911 call for service showing. I have the deputy with his cell phone in his pocket showing where he's at. And then the GPS global spotters all feed into one system. Of course, that feeds back to dispatch. So instead of constantly on the radio calling out a latitude and a longitude, oh, this is where we're at. Okay, you guys are 400 yards away. They're looking at one picture. They can all see each other and see exactly where they need to go. And then over here on the right, you'll see we've got aircraft, we've got 911 calls, we've got maps, we got all kinds of stuff on this screen. So you can literally feed into this multiple pots of data and then share it in one common platform, which is what allows a scene commander or even the first deputy on scene, information as to what you're dealing with and where you need to go. Multi-jurisdictional incidents that we've used this in, Bristol Motor Speedway. It's a small racetrack in this area, probably not very well known, but it draws quite the crowd. We'll have a couple 100,000 people show up there to watch guys drive cars really fast. And what we've done is we can take the seating chart, which is that graphic. You can see the different color coded area and overlay that on top of whether it's a road map, a satellite map, or whatever. And that way, when you're looking at the officers, you can actually see which section they're in. Many times at these events, and everybody who's worked an event where it's extremely loud and you can't hear on the radio and you can't talk on the radio, but you can chat. There's a chat feature in ATAK, or you can then be looking, even if you hear somebody on the radio and you got their identity, you can be like, oh, Amos is in Kawiki stands, and know exactly where they're at. And the reason I turned that third picture there up is you can see the altitude. So that was where I was at in the stands. You can see guys that were up top, their altitude was a little higher. The guys that were down on the ground a little lower. That really helped with situational awareness on where people were at around the event. And then the far right one is Miranda Lambert came to ETSU and did a concert. And we had multiple jurisdictions working that event. There was a large crowd there, and it was one of those situations where it was extremely loud. Officers who were standing in front of the speakers, you couldn't hear any of the radio transmissions, but this allowed us to be able to coordinate medical responses to people who had gotten sick. And as people were coming and going and transporting your primary person in and out of the venue so that you knew where people were at, it really came in handy for that event. And of course, that's also an overlay laying down on top of the Google map of the event also. Photo sharing. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
One of the things I wanted to say, Amos, on this is when I look at this, the first thing that comes to mind is augmented reality, right? So being able to use your device, scan the area in which you're assigned, and you can automatically see where your resources are. And this tech is just literally at our fingertips to do this. And like you said, I mean, it's a really cool tool to see distance and altitude of your surrounding support officers.
Yeah, to your point, Keith, exactly. I have a Samsung S23 Ultra. There's actually a plug-in. It's another plug-in you can do on the Android where I can literally pull it up and the camera shows. So I turn around, it'll put a dot where those officers are at on the camera view that I'm looking at. So they've got augmented reality built right into this. As long as your device is a pretty, it's going to have to be a pretty leading edge device. $40 device is probably not going to have the processing power to do all this in real time, but a frontline device does it with ease. We used it at Bristol Motor Speedway to track the different aircraft that were coming in, because you would see multiple helicopters coming in and you could just hold your phone over and look at it through the phone and it would show you which aircraft that was and you'd know which one to call on the radio. Without having to have any special equipment, VR headset, which there's a VR version of this too you can get, but without having that, there are the tools there you can do with the plugins to do exactly that. Photo sharing is going to get into this. This is a piece where if you look on these images, and you kind of have to pay attention, and I know it takes, sometimes, some explaining to see what you're looking at, but you'll see the camera icon right here. Well, that's where I was standing when I took this photo, and you see this cone that goes out to this aircraft icon that's out here. I was standing at this location with my device pointed this direction, and I took a picture of that aircraft in the sky. That's the kind of stuff that you can do with TAC that immediately could, and that could be from a scenario if you had a train crash or a traffic crash with a hazmat incident, and you want to be able to send photos from different places very quickly back to a scene commander who's in an EOC. He could know where you were standing, which direction you were looking, whether it be from a house with a barricaded subject, and you can send that to a SWAT team leader. He doesn't have to walk around the whole property. He can have 4 or 5 different deputies taking a photo from different locations, and he can see exactly what he's got without having to do that. The second one over there is me standing in the stands looking out over the racetrack, just to give you a better visual of when you're standing somewhere, and it gives you the feedback of which direction you were looking when you took that photo. And then I could share that photo with everybody on the server, or I could send it just to one person. Depending on what my mission is and what I'm doing, I might do that different ways. But that is a very powerful tool that is built into ATAK. The live video integration, I might be able to show you some on my full server, but we were tying, and you can see this is a courthouse in Carter County. We had the location of all the cameras, and when you clicked on one, you were looking at a live view of that camera. Because I can tell you, in this courthouse, every single camera that looks at an exterior door looks exactly like that one. So if I was to see something at that door, for me to be able to say it is the east exit camera, and I know exactly and can orient and maybe even walk an officer into a place. Hey, keep going the direction you're going, take a left. You could walk them right to a plot because you know where that camera is that you're looking at when you see that incident occur. And we interface with a lot of public facing cameras that are out there, from Earth Link, one of them. But this camera here, you can see the State Street in Bristol, is actually a shared publicly accessible camera, and we just interface with that stream. So if we're needing to look at weather or something like that, we can immediately click that link and click play, and we're looking at a live video from that location. Location history, this one's huge. You can do a breadcrumb trail for yourself to see where you're at, or from anybody else on the system. But then you can also query the server and say, hey, show me in the last 5 hours where Amos has been, or where all of these other people have been. So if you're doing a search for a child or anything like that, you can say, hey, this is where we've already covered. And this one on the right is kind of funny. That's actually one of the haunted corn mazes in my area we took the kids to. And I had my TAC on and let it track me all the way through. But immediately I could tell exactly where I had went around that place and the entire time. So you could do that with multiple people. You could have multiple tracks show up and be like, okay, we've not searched this area over here. We need to go there, type thing. And that's where drawing tools comes in. You can draw on the screen. This was actually a COVID route plan that we were working on one day. And it was just, we're trying to explain to people, hey, I need you to set up here because this is the way we're going to direct traffic. I literally just pulled my device out on the screen with my finger, drew the map, and then sent it to everybody and said, hey, this is, and there was, okay, yep, I get it. That's where we're going from and to. It took all the confusion out of it. You can do that with, if you have an active event, hey, this is where we're going to set up the LZs. This is where EMS is staging. Anything you want it to do in real time, you can pull out the drawing tools. You can draw on the screen, click a button, broadcast that out. Everybody is looking at what you just drew on that map around that event. SUAS integration. If you have a drone program at your agency, or we don't call them drones anymore, we call them SUASs, you can fly those over your event, and on the screen, you'll actually see a dot on the video of where your people are located. So if you have that medical unit or that fire unit, or maybe an officer yelling for help, they got something going on, if they've got their TAC on and you got the drone in the air or the UAS in the air, you can fly quickly over to them because you will see a dot on your video feed of where their exact location is at. There's a new video out that was just taken of a fireworks show just a few weeks ago, and it's amazing. And if anybody wants to see that, I'll find the link to it. It's posted on a ATAK Slack group earlier this week, and it's impressive what this does in a real life situation.
Hey, Amos, about
Yep.
the SUAS piece, real quick. Just real quick, I mean, is that your common DJI platform, or
Yep.
up to some of the Skydio stuff? I mean, so it's very scalable, correct?
Yeah, there's a lot of different companies that have integrated with the plugin for this. So if you're running on an Android device, you can pretty much use this to talked to your, I think, parent, Skydio, DJI. Don't hold me to any of these, but I think all those companies, those bigger companies, are using that or are making it available. If they're not now, they're going to be making it available to be able to use with this, to where it can integrate with that video feed. And with a very simple media server, you can take that video feed and broadcast it out to everybody on your TAC server. So it's not just the guy with the drone looking at the footage and calling out something to a scene commander. It can actually feed that back to the EOC so that the scene commander and the EOC can be looking at that video feed in real time on his own device, as well as maybe a SWAT team commander or a medic commander. That's I have a medic captain there that's looking and is like, man, that looks really bad. I need to send 5 people there instead of just one. So it lets everybody share that information at one time. It's extremely beneficial in those types of situations. Which also leads up into detecting drones, because over our events, now this is not counter drone, this is just drone detection. So this is not taking drones out of the sky or doing anything like that. It's just like, hey, if you're working an active scene or a large scale event and you see one drone up in the air, maybe that's the news media and you're okay with that. But maybe it's somebody who's flying over your event and you're not okay with it, whether it be a football game at a high school or college or something like that. You could pick that up. The real power of running that through something like TAC is you may have different responses for different people. If it's a jail, maybe your correction staff, you're going to send them to go try to intercept whatever contraband could be dropped in, and have patrol go out and try to intercept the pilot. And of course, on any event, you may have 2 or 3 different teams that's trying to chase down where this person is at. So you can see on the screen, the little yellow is the pilot, and the little pink up here is the drone itself. This is one, the first picture here's one I picked up in my hometown. I just happened to be driving into town and it popped up. It was flying over this church, and the pilot was actually a few streets over. And I drove up and actually seen him out there with his controller in the yard, out flying. I went down to the beach, and Destin was tracking multiple drones on the beach at the same time. And it lets you know by the ID which pilot is with which drone. This technology is emerging. It's very low cost. You just attach it to your Android device with the plugins, the Drone Home plugin that goes into an Android, the Android version of TAC, and it will very quickly allow you to track. I was at 2.2 miles on that one, and I think I was doing 2.5 miles on another one. That just very easily. There at the beach. You got something there, Keith?
Hey, Amos, on this slide again, I don't know, just want to reiterate to the audience. I always thought TAC was the killer app for first responders. This drone detection just made it that much more powerful. In our line of work, and for the audience who is involved in sheriff, EMS, or even in a correctional institution, contraband via SUAS is the #1 reason on how people are getting junk inside prisons and jails. And when you have these planned attacks, knowing where drones are and their operator, I can't think of a better tool to respond. So I'm really glad you're highlighting this today. This is impressive.
Yeah, this Drone Home tool you can use just with if you have your, say, Samsung device, it can use the Wi-Fi. Of course, that's a limited range and limited polling. They sell a device that's like $300, and that's what I was picking these drones up with. So you're not talking about really expensive to do these really powerful features. You can do all this stuff with very low cost and give yourselves the advantage. It really does give you the advantage. WASP, for all you firefighters, EMA directors out there, WASP is a plugin that runs on the Android version of TAC. It allows you to mark up your scene with the FEMA icon set. So this is an add-on to TAC. It's very easy to do on the Android version. You can pull this up, load it. It will have all of the standard FEMA markings that you could ever want, so that you could go in and mark in heavy damage, light damage, death, any hazards, and very quickly mark this up. And as you drop a dot or one of these markers on the screen, it shows up for everybody. So if you have multiple teams going out, there's none of this, hey, go out and map that neighborhood, come back. Now we're standing at a big map and we're all going to remap the whole thing again and then decide where to send people. You can literally in the field, as they mark a house and as they even change information about that, you could be in your EOC watching it change in real time and then be able to divert people. Be like, hey, stop going east. Everything back east is looking clear. I want you to go north because it looks like more of our damage is north, and not have to wait for those teams to go out and come back, or to be calling in or sending, Google map dots to you, say, hey, this house is really bad. We think we got somebody trapped in here type thing. They can mark it on the map. You can immediately know where to send your specialized teams to, because you may have more than one of those incidences on one occurrence, especially in your tornado, hurricane areas and things like that. Dispatch centers. So this was at the Miranda Lambert concert. Washington County, Tennessee had their EMS, or I'm sorry, their 911 operators inside here. And we had everybody, police, fire, and EMS all in the EOC, but it also allowed them working the radios to see where people were at. You can actually see the stadium back there on the screen in the background. Something that happened pretty early on in the concert, somebody thought a fight broke out. There's officers were yelling on the radio, but you could not make out over the music what they were saying. These ladies very effectively got additional units to that person because they could tell them where to go. And they realized it was a medical emergency somebody in the crowd was having, and they were very easily to tell EMS, hey, they're that dot there, go there. And they knew exactly where the venue to go, where they themselves couldn't even hear their own radios. It was very effective and in that type of setting. So how do you get started? Like I say, the cost for the server and the software is free. There's money that's potentially available for Homeland Security for devices and things like that. It does have a little bit of a lift to spin up a server. There is documentation on tac.gov on if you know a little bit about Linux or Docker on how to do that yourself. This is some screenshots of my server I'm running. I'll show you my server here in a minute. But you could spin up your own server. You can run it on a Raspberry Pi. You can throw it on Azure or AWS or DigitalOcean. There's a bunch of those that allow you to spin up a Linux server for relatively low cost in the cloud. Or if you have a Raspberry Pi, they're $35. It'll run TAC just fine. You could hire somebody to spin you up a server who may know a little bit about Linux. A lot of agencies will do that. They're just like, hey, I don't want to spend the time to learn this. I'll hire somebody or get county IT to do it or something. Or you hire a company to spin you up a server and manage it for you. There's a lot of guys out there that do stuff like that. There's Citix that's run that does a lot of stuff. I run the server for the East Tennessee group on my Azure instance, and it works extremely well there. So more information if y'all want. If you scan that QR code, it'll just add me as a contact. Feel free to reach out, screenshot this, take this down if you need something. Please reach out to me. I am by no means an expert, but I know a lot of really smart people, and I can reach out to them. I've done this quite a few times, and I believe in it, and I can maybe give some guidance if it helps you out. So feel free to reach out to me at any point. Keith, Dale, y'all want me to cover anything else before I actually show my ATAK server as it runs today?
No, I think you nailed it. I mean, why don't you show your tax server? But while you're bringing that up, I just wanted to kind of highlight a few things that you shared that I want to make sure the audience is aware of right now. One, you saw the common operating picture. Amos is going to go through that here in a minute and see this as it's brought up on the screen right now. What does that mean? Multiple agencies, one system to look at. Convergence and collaboration. As much as we are out there talking to agencies and across the U.S., the two things that they talk about is help us converge our platforms and help us collaborate with other agencies. And this is an open app that allows you to do that. So back to you, Amos. I see you're up and running.
Okay, so I'm going to zoom out here so you can just see in reference to the United States where my AO is. You can see in the background, I got a few firms loaded. If you're familiar with firms, they're the satellite-based infrared trackers that tell us basically where brush fires or something really hot is at in the United States. So you can load those in too. And as I zoom into East Tennessee, you can see I have an aircraft tracking layer that does all air traffic. We also have just a version of this that just has emergency aircraft only if you want to cut out some of the clutter. I'm just trying to show for you guys. I can see I've got a few National Guard helicopters up, a few medical helicopters up, and it looks like Nashville Metro PD has their helicopter up. So you can stack this too. So what you see is I have a very small area showing aircraft right around my AO that shows everything, but I'm not showing all aircraft in the United States. Then I have a much wider net that shows emergency aircraft around my area. So there's ways of stacking this data just into your AO. So number one, you're not swamping somebody's device with a bunch of junk that they don't need. I could very easily, if I wanted to, just go out into my settings, click onto my server. Oops, not that one. Go into my channels, and you can see this is what I want to show you. I have multiple channels on here. So we have aircraft all, aircraft emergency, aircraft military. If I turn on aircraft military, it'll give me every military flagged aircraft that ADSBX tracks in the world. I have our EMS fire. We're doing some stuff to interface with our flock LPR cameras. We have an interop channel. This is how at our regional server, if you're on interop, you're sharing across disciplines. So the way we basically layered ours was fire, EMS, rescue are all kind of on the bottom layer. They all see each other. Law enforcement sits at a layer above that. They don't necessarily share down, but everybody below them shares up. And so if the law enforcement wants to share down, what they do is they just turn on the interop channel, and then everybody on the law enforcement and all that will show up down below on police and EMS and rescue. We also have a parking. ETSU has a large parking group, and we track those parking units to make sure they're where they're at, but they don't see police, fire, or EMS. They just see all the other parking people, but then parking filters up into the other groups. So it makes it real easy. You'll also see I have Carter County and Sullivan County 911. We're bringing on Unicoi and Washington County here shortly and trying to get the rest in the region to serve their 911 calls up. I'll show you how that looks. So if I click OK on this and then zoom out, you'll start to see more aircraft will eventually populate around the world as more of these military aircraft start to pop in. I think I have that running on a 60-second interval. So you can see there's military aircraft, and I can actually track what's going on around the world until they, decide to turn those off for, some type of mission. But that kind of clutters my screen up, right? And I don't need that for right here for this instance. I just turn that off, and then it'll filter those guys out, and it'll clean up my screen. So I'm going to zoom in. This is my county, Carter County here. I can see that I've got a medical helicopter that's flying across right now. They're doing 152 miles an hour across the city, headed out on a mission somewhere. I'm attached to two servers here, so I'm getting two icons for them. I can also zoom in and see the officers and where they're at currently. I can see fire trucks over here. I can see different agencies that are around. So we have multiple agencies. These little C's are a 911 call for service. So we do this in two ways in my jurisdiction. If I click details on this, this is Carter County. I'm a Carter County officer, so I get to see all the details about the call. I can see all the notes that 911 puts in. If I was from another agency, all I would get would be the address and the type of call that it is. So those types of things can be controlled. Sometimes I don't want everybody seeing this. Fine. What would you be okay with them knowing? And then feed that into the system. If you're a 911 director and you're like, hey, I would be okay with the type of call and the address, but I don't want notes to show up for nobody. Great, that can be done. Just know that there's multiple ways of doing that. If you're a Sullivan County officer, you would get Sullivan County's details. But if a Carter County officer, you would just get the address and the location. So these are some of the things that you can feed in here. Yeah, go ahead, Keith.
Hey, Amos, I was just going to say, from a standpoint of scalability, right? And I'm just calling this out because you're doing a fantastic job. You literally could be sitting in your motorhome, your lake house, at the sheriff office, no matter where you are, and you have a real-time crime center at your fingertip. You can put this on multiple screens. You can put this on a huge display. And if you're an agency looking at real-time crime center, integration of flock, and all these edge devices that are out here feeding in information, I mean, this blows my mind to see how much data you're able to filter in and have built in your region. So kudos to you. I look at this as a real-time crime center and a joint emergency operations center.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, down in Nashville at the National Guard Joint Operations Center, they have a Samsung tablet running DeX plugged into a 85-inch TV, and that's how they run their crime center. So it's just off to the side is the tablet, and it's plugged the HDMI out and it goes up into this large screen, and that's what they're feeding it off of. So you can imagine, just from a cell phone running DeX, you could run a large EOC or spin one up in a hotel room if you needed to, because you had a large TV sitting there. So you're exactly right, and it allows you to do that. We also interface our radios with Zello, so you can have a full real-time communication center on one single device with push-to-talk into your LMR radios, back out. So there's so many things that you can do with this. I'll show you up here at the Sullivan County Jail. They have TAK on all their devices in the jail, so we can track their devices. If they have one that's going on a transport or even between buildings, you'd be able to see that. Right back out. Kingsport is spinning up their EOC today for Fun Fest coming up in a few days, and when they do that, they're going to have our drone detection technology out there. We will run probably some Samsung devices with DeX, putting it up on large screens inside the EOC, and that will be the displays that drive that. So, you know, we are very open as far as kind of how people want to use the system in our region. Some agencies chose just to pick a color. Some disciplines, you know, chose to choose fire or whatever. We don't have a real strict policy on that right now, because it just allows agencies, you know, it's easy for me to say, hey, all law enforcement needs to be blue. But then when you get into Washington County, where if you zoom in here, you'll see there's ETSU is using yellow. You got Johnson City using blue. You got Washington County using green. You got Carter County guys that'll drive through here and they got teal. There's just a lot that you can see that, you know, it's like, okay, if you guys want to use multiple colors, because y'all are the ones looking at each other every day, do it, just as long as you're using the tool. That way, if there's a large incident that happens, maybe a pursuit from one county to the other, you can zoom in. And so, you know, when I was talking about locking in on somebody, I'll take this officer here, maybe not. He looks like he just pulled into a parking lot. So that's always the fun of it. Oh, Robbie Scott, he's a good one. He's one of the guys I work with. I can click on him and lock on him. As you can see, I'm not touching the computer, but as he drives around, it keeps him centered up on the screen. I can very quickly click back on him and see he's going 58 miles an hour. And so I get that data in real time. If he's in a pursuit, I'm watching him right here. Other officers can be zoomed out and be like, hey, that's where he's at. I'm maybe going to set up stop sticks here, and I would be able to see them out in front of him. And know how close they are. And then that's where having your dispatch center on, because they would be the ones who, as part of that C2 concept, command and control, their control, they're saying, hey, you know, 9-2 is half a mile from you. You know, and if I needed to know like that type of information, and I'll tell you a way that we use that a lot is with our helicopters. We will do a bloodhound to a helicopter, and it'll say, hey, your helicopter's 20 miles out. You don't need to shut that highway down just yet. You can wait, you know, a few more minutes. Go ahead, Keith.
Hey, Amos, I just have a question, and more or less a statement. I know a lot of our listeners probably use AVL, right, and in their vehicles. And just to emphasize, this is, you know, ATAK on a mobile device. So, yep. You know, for all intents and purposes, right, a Samsung phone. It's strapped to the body armor of this officer, this deputy. Perhaps it's even mounted in his vehicle. You know, how was I guess the question I have for you is, how was the response from the deputies of this multi-jurisdiction county responsive to, hey, listen, now you're going to track me as a deputy versus my car? That's just going too far. You know, now I'm wondering, now every agency is going to see where I am. Does showing them the capability and possibilities of this resonate with, wow, this is a situational, I need help, let's stay in the fight type application for safety? Or is this looked at as big brother to them?
Yep. So that's an excellent question, because I get that a lot when I talk to chiefs and sheriffs. They're like, well, how do I get buy-in for my guys that will actually use it? And I can tell you this, the agencies that already have AVL, those guys just don't care, because they were used to it, right? They're tracking their vehicle and they know that they're out doing their job. You'll get some officers that kick back, oh, you're just wanting to see if I'm sitting, you know, at my little hidey hole. Well, you know, that's your supervisor's job. It's not my job. And I find most chiefs and sheriffs let the supervisors supervise their people. And I can tell you a funny story. I had one of the guys is like, well, I don't want 911 on when I go home to feed my dog. I was like, what? Has that been a problem? And he's like, well, I mean, I could see it being one. I said, have they said anything to you in the last 9 months? He's like, no. I said, well, they've had this for 9 months. And he was like, really? You know, to his surprise, nobody cared that he went home and fed his dog or let him out, to use the bathroom. And they'd been using it for 9 months, and he was just finding out that they had it. And that shocked him that, hey, nobody has done this. And it really does come. If you're doing your job, nobody cares. If you're in trouble, a lot of people care. And that's where it comes out to. If you're in trouble, I want to know where you're at. And I can tell you that the receptiveness at my agencies, because we've been running this for 5 years now, at first, there was some kickback. I'll be honest with you, there was. But now you'll hear him on the radio. Comm center, check his ATAK. Where's he at? Because somebody there's not responding to the radio, or they're out on something, or they're in a foot pursuit. And instead of trying to say, well, I don't know, I'm in this guy's backyard somewhere, they know exactly where they're at, and they know exactly where to go to get to them the quickest. And so, to your point, this is for dismounted. You got your cell phone in your pocket or in your pouch on your vest. It's not where's Amos's car, it's where's Amos. And this works very effectively if you're working um, an event like a festival where you're out on foot patrol and you may have something occur on that foot patrol. It does me no good to know where you parked your car 3 hours ago. It's where are you right now? And that's one of the big advantages of this. And the fact that you're not having to pay a $8,000-9,000 a year or even a month bill to track a car that doesn't do you no good when you're in a dismounted position makes a big difference. And I think that that's where you get a lot of the buy-in. Because, for most of these guys, it is where they at right now in their car. But when they get out of their vehicle and they're out going, it does make a big difference too. So, yeah, that's extremely valid. And I think that a lot of that has been taken care of. So, what you're seeing on the screen here is most of these colored dots are going to be officers or firefighters or maybe even ambulances at this point. The C's are what we put our 911 calls for service in. Of course, you can see the aircraft, but there's other things that you can put into it. This little F over here is a demo. It's for our flock identifier that we're just doing some testing with. So there's some stuff like that. There's tons of sensors and data that you can push into this. And then very quickly, very easily, you can clean it up by zooming into an area and then seeing where people are at in that particular area to close it down for just you. Go ahead, Keith.
So Amos, a couple things real quick before we jump out of this and open up for questions. Is there a way to hone in on your correctional facility? Because I thought that was interesting. Is that not only is this TAC used for your units that are out and on patrol, but look at here, you have units that are actually confined to a institution, and this is used as not only a transparency, accountability, but also like say, hey, we want to know where our guys are in case there's a fleeing suspect or just manpower control. Can you talk about this for a moment?
Yeah, so this agency, they use another program that I sell to do logging for their inmates, and every device has a TAC tracker on it so that we constantly getting the feedback from that. But to your point, if you do have that inmate that walks off from a detail and you got dogs out, you got your canines out, you got your drones out looking, it ties all that together. Is a great, powerful tool just for that. If they have to do a transport, so we have some facilities that use this for transport vehicles, and I could zoom out the United States and I might see one, down in Chattanooga picking up an inmate, or maybe the middle of Georgia, and they leave it on all the time. And when they get back, they'll take that track of that trip and save it and be like, look, this is the detailed log of my entire trip. This is everywhere I went, the speeds I drove, and every stop I made, so that there's no, hey, he took me out, tried to, threaten me out in the backwoods somewhere.
So one of our
Amos,
one of our attendees made a fantastic comment, and I wanted to echo that on here. And that is, keep in mind, half of the day we're at either low light or no light. So using this type of solution, right, gives you that visibility and confidence level when you're trying to find that subject or your partner. You now have a tool that gives you that edge without using a flashlight that could halo your location, but be able to tactically find someone. So I'll turn it back over to you guys.
Yeah. So that's kind of the gist of it. If there's any questions, I'll turn it back over to y'all and see what you got to have, Scott, if you got something.
Yeah, we've got a bunch of questions. Thank you so much. What a very informative presentation. Just amazing. And there's a ton of questions. So we'll try to if we can keep the answers sort of short to get through all of these. First question is who created the school map overlays? Are the cameras brought in as a GIS layer? Sort of two questions in one there.
So we've done it a couple different ways. We actually got the schools to provide us. At one of my schools, we had them. They provided us like a CAD drawing, and we use that to make our overlays. There's a company in Kentucky that does a fantastic job of doing a school security map. I wish I had that one on here, but they make an amazing map. That the way that they number their doors and windows is fantastic, and that's very important that when you do it consistently and you train everybody, police, fire, and EMS on how to read those numbers on the outside and what they mean when you look at a map versus what's actually there. Because they'll do stuff like, might be door 4, G for glass or S for solid, or maybe they don't put anything. They do door 4 and it's G if it's a glass door. You can breach very easily because your fastest way into a building may not be beating your way through a steel door. If just around the corner is a glass door, you can just bust and walk right through. So it's things like that. Labeling your windows to where if that's window number 10 and there's 5 windows, that might all lead into one room. And then number 11 is the next room. Things that you can do to just make it very fast, very easy to stay situationally aware of what you're looking at. And then what we do on the sensors for the cameras is you can interface the camera. And I don't know if I'll get this one to work today or not, but this is my house and I can click on this and hit play. And sometimes it works and sometimes it don't because the way my internet is. But as long as you have a public facing URL where you can get to that video feed, then you can have that feed pull into TAC. I have a lot better luck on my ATAK than I do on my WinTAC, showing this out here. So if I was able to share my Android screen, it would definitely, show up a lot better. But we also interface with all the traffic cameras in the state of Tennessee. The National Guard did a very good map that shows that. So there's ways of learning, different ways of doing things. And so, it's just kind of what you want and how you want it to work.
Is
This
there
overlay you can see on my house here is my property lines. I just did it for myself at my house so I could keep up where my property lines are at when I'm out walking around.
you mentioned a company that can put these maps together, and someone in the audience just wanted to know, do you have the name of that company that does that?
I can get that. It was a retired Secret Service agent working as an SRO in a school up there. If somebody wants that, I'll have to pull up his information. But very, very great way of marking down a place. I mean, he does a fantastic job. It's probably the best, and I have studied dozens of way of marking up schools, and his is the most impressive that I've seen. And I'd be happy to give that to the group. I can
Okay.
get that information and put that out.
Okay, the next question is from a VFD and SAR viewpoint. Can we connect to our digital radios or a mobile mesh?
Yep. So we're actually working right now with Unicoi County, Tennessee. They have, of course, they have the way on their radios. It sends their GPS location every time. We're working with that group because they said it's very easy to get to that data. And there's kind of like an APRS type feed. You just listen for it and then you plot it on the map. So what they're doing, because they have a large portion of their county doesn't have much cellular service, they're going to make it to where every time they key up, talk on their mic, it will overlay on the map. So we're working on that now. I know there's other places that's already done that, especially in the ham radio world using APRS. They just take an APRS feed and dump it right on top of TAC. So that kind of stuff can be done. Apparently, it can be done with the Motorola systems. It can be done with some of the other systems that are out there. It's just a matter of finding what your system is and how it works. And then as far as their own mesh network, absolutely. There's plugins that you can do on the Android version that will interface with most of those mesh radio systems, and then it'll bounce out your signal so that you can, if you're in a cellular denied area or you don't have good coverage, it will still show up on your map, your display. It's typically, to Keith's points earlier, it's going to be one of those plugins. So you have to use the Android version and then interface with that radio.
And just a comment, David in the chat group commented that CRG is the company that does those school overlays.
So Amos, you showed a door camera, and one of the questions is presumably the property of the school. Is there an MOU that you had to have the school sign, or how did you handle that?
So the one camera that I've shown is a public facing camera the school system pushes out to allow parents to basically see the front of the school, right? And that's why I was comfortable showing that one.
Okay.
The cameras that are inside the school are more controlled. And that's where you would have to have that MOU in place Hey, how do you use it? Who has access to it? Because you could build that list and only share it with a few select group of people if you wanted to. Maybe at 911, maybe the chief, the SWAT team commander. Not everybody's getting access to those cameras, because with the school system, there is always that concern that somebody exploits that camera system, to do, some nefarious things, because there are bad people in this world. But and they do take their security very seriously. So you do want to tightly control that, and that would definitely be something you'd want to have in place, and maybe control that access to a limited number of people that would need it, not just everybody just to go browsing type thing.
Okay. In disasters, the network often becomes taxed. How do you deal with this issue?
That having the right infrastructure is always the best course of action. So, the old military adage of one is none and two is one is always the best that we've found. And we're currently trying to build out some of that infrastructure in our region. Right now, we're mostly using the cellular and Wi-Fi networks to do this type of stuff, right? Uh, but if you lose that, if you actually lose that cellular network due to a tornado or a hurricane or something like that, there are those plugins, there are those softwares out there, or those hardware solutions. There's radios, Beartooth, Gotana, there's some different mesh-tastic type interfaces and things that people can use to build those mesh networks and be able to still share this data across those. And it's one of those things in my district. We're starting to do more and more of that, looking at how we can put those systems into place to be able to track this stuff without, say, any cellular. And that would be the first one, because that's that may be one that goes. We're very fortunate. Cellular has been very robust in our area, but I do know that in some of the places where they have large sections of maybe a jurisdictions with zero coverage, in those types of situations, that's where you want to use like one of those radio systems, and they will go, I've seen where guys get hundreds of miles of coverage out of that. It's just that's where you get into cost. It's like this system is free up until a point, and then it starts to cost if you need this and if you need that, because that stuff doesn't come for free. Somebody's got to support that.
Okay, we got two more questions and about 2 minutes left. I want to go to this question here because I think a lot of the audience will want to know this. And it's, can you give us an idea of how much this costs for startup, for the continued operation, for the storage, and what personnel and server resources by the owner are needed?
So I can tell you a little bit about our situation. Homeland Security District 1, so it's 8 counties in Upper East Tennessee, decided to put some information sharing money into supporting this system. I'm running that for our district, and it's a very low cost. You could spin it up yourself if you was to go build an Azure server and put the time into following the instructions and building up your own server. You would probably have a $60 a month server on Azure, or maybe a $30 a month on DigitalOcean would support this. That's how low you could probably go if you have no infrastructure now. For somebody to do it, there's very easy videos on YouTube on how to do it, or documentation. As long as you're familiar with Linux and what you can do there, I would encourage you to just use some best security practices on, limit your port 22, which is your administrative port, to maybe just a single IP address. Don't let thousands of people attempt to log into it. Some security stuff like that is best practices. There's a lot of good articles out there on what you can do. I IP whitelist the tool services that push into my server to limit their access, so that I don't even listen for traffic from any other place on the internet except my tool server. And by tools, I mean what's pushing in aircraft, 911, stuff like that. That I segregate all that stuff out just to keep it as secure and as locked down as possible to keep other people from in it. So if you're going to do it, go into it with security as the mindset number one, and you'll be in good shape. And I will always help. There's some Slack groups that can help. So if you get on a Slack groups, they will do all kinds of stuff on there that will push something out for you. So there's resources available for things like that.
Hey, Scott, just to make a quick point on this, I want to make a strong point. When Amos says $60 to $30 a month, that's for the server fee, right? So
Yep.
the unique piece of this application is you're not licensing every single end user, right? So
Right.
you can build your server based on how many seats you need, and then that's where it becomes scalable. Yes, your deputies, officers, and whatnot is going to need an edge device, preferably, you know, Android, Samsung, or something ruggedized that's going to give them that edge compute. But this is a very scalable, not per month, not per user per month. It's per
Right.
server.
Okay.
Yep.
Amos, the last question that we have here is, if you have a control center where the data is being presented on multiple workstations, can each operator independently control what he or she sees?
Yeah, so that's where we use the channels feature. And so you can kind of turn on and off. If I wanted to, I could turn on and off. I could also filter. If I just click on the button off. So you clean this up, you can do, you know, you can say, hey, I only want to see my canine officers, you know, and I can uncheck everybody on here. And the only thing I'll have left is my canine officer, wherever he's at. I've got one, boom, young. I had him turned off. Right there's a canine officer. So if I need to find a canine officer very quickly, I just did it that quickly. You know, so you can filter this stuff down very easily for, you know, by team, by color, by function, you know, whatever it is that you want to do, even by name. All this stuff I can turn. If I don't want to see aircraft anymore, I can go into markers. I can just start turning stuff off and say, hey, let me clean this up. You know, there's too much here for me. So the tool itself, if I was to give you a full demo of this, it'd probably take a couple days with the things that you can do on how you can plan and different things that can be done with the system. So definitely one of the things is get in it and start trying things. Watch some of the YouTube videos that are out there that people have done, because it'll give you a good idea. That's how I learned how to do other things. So there's a lot of features in here just for doing that exact thing.
Amos, if someone wants to reach you after this, what would be the best way for them to reach out to you? Can you give us that?
Yeah, probably my email that I had shared, and I'll share this again, just if there's somebody out there that wants to, let me swap this back around and get it to the end of this presentation. Well, that went too fast. I did that a little quicker than I thought I would. But the my Amos Holliva at copics.us, which is the one of the companies that I run this one here.
Okay.
You know, scan that QR code. It'll add it to your phone. Take a screenshot of this. Shoot me an email at amoshall@copics.us. Reach out. Anything I can do to help somebody, I'll be happy to. You know, get on some of the TAC Slack groups, Discord groups that are out there, because that's where I go to ask questions to guys who are way smarter than I am. And I mean, it is a community. You'll find that there's a community of people who support this and use this, and they're always willing to help. And that makes a big difference, because when I've needed help, all I've done is just reach out to somebody on there, and they're like, oh, hey, try this. You know, it's, yep, that worked. You know, there's a great group out there that supports this in the back end. Because it being
Amos,
a free software, you know, you kind of need that.
Amos, thank you so much. Again, such an informative presentation. I want to give Keith just a minute to close this out, but thank you so much. Thank you to Samsung for sponsoring this very informative webinar. And Keith, if you could just close us out real quick.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks for the amazing attendees that were here. The questions that were asked today were extremely relevant. Amos, well done today, sir. If we learned anything today, it's convergence, collaboration, and a common operating picture. And this link, we will surface a link on this so you can rewatch this at your agency's desire and time. So thank you again, Scott and Dale, for hosting us today. Back to you.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. That'll conclude our webinar. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.